Could California become a sanctuary state for medical child abuse?
It's time for The Line of Fire with your host, biblical scholar and cultural commentator, Dr. Michael Brown. Your voice for moral sanity and spiritual clarity. Call 866-34-TRUTH to get on The Line of Fire. And now, here's your host, Dr. Michael Brown.
Friends, there is a reason that we have been shouting from the rooftops for so many years about the direction of certain activist circles within our society. There's a reason that we have been raising our voice. We care about people. We care about every individual, however they identify. At the same time, we see a dangerous agenda sweeping the nation. And often the ones that are impacted the most are children. Number to call if you have questions about this today, 866-34-TRUTH, 866-348-7884. But I want to go straight to my guest in California, Greg Burt with the California Family Policy Council. And Greg, a lot of things are happening in California. I think the whole nation needs to know about it. Would you agree?
Oh, definitely. California is intent on becoming the sanctuary for minors being sterilized with transgender drugs and surgeries. So they need to be alarmed at what California's up to.
Yeah, we're hearing of different states saying they're going to be sanctuary states for abortion. Of course, Governor Gavin Newsom leading the way in California for that. But now this is yet another step. Now, a lot has happened in California. And Greg, you've been on the front lines. I get your emails and see what's happening. You've worked with ex-gays and tried to influence the legislature there. Let's talk about two major bills. We'll break them up that are forthcoming in California. And you can do this on a legal level that everyone can understand. Break these down for us. Tell us exactly what's at stake.
Yeah, so there's two bills that are going through the legislature right now. They're being introduced by a senator out of San Francisco, Scott Wiener. He's an openly gay man that is promoting these particular bills, and he's particularly upset about what he sees happening around the country with states limiting access to puberty blockers, cross-sex hormones, and surgeries for minors. And he wants California to be a place where you can come and be protected from those laws as they're enacted. But he also, for families and parents, or even doctors who are fleeing from those states that are now banning those treatments, but he wants to provide children, any minor who gets to California, California courts, this particular bill will sever parental rights of the parent, and they will take jurisdiction over that child so that child can get the cross-sex hormones, puberty blockers, and surgeries they want, even if the parents will not agree to it. So this is a SB 107, and it is making its way quickly through the legislature with a hearing next week, but it's got to be passed by the end of the month, so it's going to go quick. So that's one of them.
All right, so let's just focus on this for one moment. We understand the ramifications. So doctors say, all right, here's the place to go. We can do our transgender surgery. We can put these kids on hormones, block the onset of puberty and all of that. Parents, families say, hey, here's the place for us to go. We can get this. So that's bad enough. And we'll talk about why in a moment. But how old would a kid have to be to get into California on his or her own and say, hey, I want these treatments and I can't get them in my home state?
There's no age limit. The bill simply says that a child, if a child is brought to California, a court would be prohibited from considering whether that child was kidnapped from the person with legal custody if that child has come to the California for gender affirming care. So the family courts will even take temporary jurisdiction of the child if that child has come for the purpose of drugs or transitioning. It's going to treat it. The California already has a similar law if a child is being abused in another state, right? So if there's child abuse happening, then California will take temporary jurisdiction of that child if the child is running from being abused by their parent in another state. So California is going to treat that situation just like they would treat an abused child, because in their mind, a parent is actually abusing a child by not giving them the life-saving treatment of gender-affirming care, they call it.
So let's just say, theoretically, let's say you've got a 15-year-old girl. She's got a cousin that's 20 years old, and the cousin's family lives in California. The girl lives in Texas now, and let's say Texas says you can't do these transgender surgeries or put the kids on drugs. So the cousin says, hey, let's take a trip to California. Parents, yeah, you can go with your cousin. Then to find out that the kid's going to stay there with the other family, and maybe she's 16 years old, going to have her breast removed. I mean, this is... Are we exaggerating and saying some of this? Is this really what the law is saying?
That is what the law is saying. And when California comes up with these crazy laws, I always think, you know what, no one's going to believe me, right? So I always get a bunch of attorneys to just confirm, right? And so I got four different attorney organizations confirming what I'm saying. And I'm just going to quote you a quote from Pacific Justice Institute, which is a Christian legal organization.
Sure.
And Matthew McReynolds, he said, SB 107 may be the most brazen assault on fundamental parental rights in the history of this state. This is not a game. It's not a spoof or a joke. Families who thought they had escaped California will not be safe if this bill is enacted.
Yeah. It is.
We're telling the truth here.
It is shocking. In fact, let's play a clip. This is Chloe Cole. This is a young woman who became convinced that she was actually trapped in the wrong body. And let's hear what happened to her. This is not theoretical. This is a young woman's life. Let's listen to her testimony before these very legislators saying, hey, this is what reality is. This is what we're dealing with.
My name is Chloe Cole, and I am a 17-year-old detransitioner from the Central Valley. I was medically transitioned from ages 13 to 16. My parents took me to a therapist who affirmed my male identity, and the therapist did not care about causality or encourage me to learn to be comfortable in my body. He brushed off my parents' concerns about the efficacy of hormones, puberty blockers, and surgeries. My parents were given the threat of suicide as a reason to move me forward in my transition. My endocrinologist, after 2 to 3 appointments, put me on puberty blockers and injectable testosterone. At age 15, I asked to remove my breasts. My therapist continued to affirm my transition. I attended a top surgery class that was filled with around 12 girls that thought they were men. Most were my age or younger. None of us were going to be men. We were fleeing from the uncomfortable feeling of becoming women. I was unknowingly physically cutting off my true self from my body, irreversibly and painfully. Our trans identities were not questioned. I went through with surgery. Despite having therapists and attending the top surgery class, I really didn't understand all of the ramifications of any of the medical decisions I was making. I wasn't capable of understanding, and it was downplayed consistently. My parents, on the other hand, were pressured to continue my so-called gender journey with a suicide threat. I will never be able to breastfeed a child. I have blood clots in my urine. I am unable to fully empty my bladder. I do not yet know if I am capable of carrying a child to full term. In fact, even the doctors who put me on puberty blockers and testosterone do not know. SB 107 is circumventing states' laws that have needed safeguards in place so my story is not repeated. Children cannot consent. Vote no on SB 107.
Yeah, this is what we're dealing, friends. It is absolutely heartbreaking. And Greg, before I was on Tyra Banks' show in 2009, if you can believe this, to talk about these very issues as they brought out kids as young as 7 or 8, first time on national TV that this was being shown with these little kids. And I was the only voice saying you're experimenting with the children. I reached out to Dr. Paul McHugh, who is the leading psychologist at Johns Hopkins University and who got sex change surgery banned from Johns Hopkins Medical Center. Now they recently reinstated it, but he got it banned for decades. And I reached out to him and said, have your views changed on this? And he said, to paraphrase, any medical interference, drug interference, surgical interference with the development of a child is child abuse. And this is what we're dealing with. California becoming a sanctuary state for medical child abuse.
I know. And some states are finally standing up against it. I'm not sure if you've seen Ken Paxton, Attorney General of Texas, put out an official opinion back in February. It's a great, about 15-page summary of why these transitioning surgeries and drugs are child abuse.
Yeah.
And the crazy thing is, there is no, and I'm reading from the report, there is no long-term mental health outcomes that are improved or rates of suicide that are reduced by hormonal or surgical intervention. And then the other thing is that he quotes here is childhood onset gender dysphoria has been shown to have a high rate of natural resolution.
Yep.
Up to 98% of kids, if you don't transition them, they come to learn to accept their bodies. Right? If it was 50%, why would you ever do this knowing you could mistakenly sterilize someone for life?
Yeah.
Right? There's no going back.
There's no going back. And these kids, a lot of them are confused. And if anybody ever has a teenager, I got a couple teenagers, and they don't know. They struggle with emotions all the time. They're struggling to find out who they are. Why would you let them decide and make permanent decisions, at 11, 12, 13? Right.
And they're even younger.
We wouldn't for any other area of life. And what's really interesting, Greg, is that there are now more and more gay and lesbian activists speaking up, because what they're saying is, a lot of these kids are just gay or lesbian. And in fact, out of that very high percentage you mentioned, and it seems to be average in the around 90% that will just come through and no longer feel they're trapped in their own body. Many will identify as gay or lesbian. Say, well, that's the whole thing. It's just a gay kid, and you're trying to surgically mutilate them. So even unlikely voices, including now people who have transitioned themselves, and they're speaking out saying, no, don't do this to the children. It's wrong. And you could never change a male into a female, no matter what you do, or vice versa. All right, we'll talk about the other bill when we come back, and some other developments from the recent years in California with Greg Burt from the California Family Policy Council. Thanks, friends, for joining us on the Line of Fire as we talk about what is happening in California. Radical, extreme, beyond what you think is possible, and yet actually being considered for law in California. So speaking with Greg Burt from the California Family Policy Council. Greg, tell us about the second bill that relates to this one.
Yeah, this is another bill from Senator Wiener out of San Francisco. He's been upset that there are still some doctors here in California who refuse to provide transitioning drugs and surgeries to people. Right? A lot of doctors, sadly, have not spoken up against the effects of these drugs, but they're trying to keep their head down, and they just are refusing to provide, whether it's cross-sex hormones, puberty blockers, or doing surgeries. They don't want to have anything to do with it, and they're refusing to do with it, and that is making Scott here very upset. So what he has done is he has introduced a bill, SB 923, and this bill is all to put pressure on these doctors. What it does is it requires anybody employed or being insured by a health provider to go through LGBT training, sensitivity type training, where they learn about how best to treat and talk with and deal with those who identify as transgender. Okay, so that's bad enough. That's been happening in a bunch of different professions here in California. But if this bill also provides a complaint provision where if someone files a complaint against a doctor for not providing this type of care, then the doctor has to be re-educated, right? And the complaint, if it's found credible, is made public, right? And sanctions can be added, imposed on the doctor if he still refuses to provide the care, right? the care, right? I'm using their language.
Right.
You know, the sterilizing treatment, and this is simply to take those remaining doctors who haven't fallen in line and either ruin their careers, publicly shame them, or coerce them into doing these things that their conscience would violate their conscience. I mean, it's setting up for a great big lawsuit, but he's going ahead with it anyway.
So again, let's flesh this out. Let's say that you are a doctor and you are known for treating women with breast cancer, and you are known for performing mastectomies and things like that, strong reputation. So here's a 17-year-old girl. She's been on puberty blockers for years already, and now she's ready to take that next step and get a mastectomy. And this doctor, in conscience, is not going to remove the breasts of a woman who's healthy. There's no cancer. There's no medical reason to do it. So she goes to this doctor because he's highly recommended and says, no, we don't do that under these circumstances. I only do a mastectomy if there's cancer disease, and therefore we have to remove the breasts. So theoretically now, if he refuses, he could be publicly shamed. There could be lawsuits against him. There could be a complaint filed that is now on record. So when you go to search for this guy, this blemish is there. And who knows what could happen beyond that. Now others, oh, you don't do this, kind of gang up on him. Am I understanding that correctly, or am I exaggerating?
No, first you'll have to be into the re-education class.
Oh, right. Forgot. I left that out. Sorry. I left that out. Yep.
Yeah. So if he fails to provide the care or the treatment or the mastectomy, he'll be forced back into the class, right? But and that's after there's a complaint system with some type of evaluation to see if the complaint is verified, right? But then once it's verified that yes, this doctor won't do a mastectomy on this healthy girl, he'll have to be re-educated. And then I'm reading from the law here. It says the bill would also require the departments to track and monitor complaints received by the department related to trans-inclusive care and to publicly report this data as specified. Yeah.
Yep.
So what's that about? Publicly report this data. We're going to shame you, right? It is crazy that there is a particular treatment, right, that doctors now are forced to give. I mean, can you name another treatment like this?
Right. So
where a doctor is mandated to give, or you're going to be shamed.
Yeah. So let's just think of it. You go to a heart doctor, right? And you say, hey, doctor, I've got this condition, and I understand that you have a treatment that is very popular, with this, surgery that you do, and it's gotten great results. And he looks at you and says, yeah, you're not a good candidate. No, it's, I wouldn't recommend it. And I certainly wouldn't perform it. I don't think it's got a good chance of success. So we're not going to do it. And I would discourage you from seeing someone else because I don't think it's going to work. But anyway, I won't do it. All right. So you walk out the door, right? The last thing you want is someone operating you who doesn't want to. A doctor can do that. Doc, I'd like this medication. No, I don't recommend that. Given your other medications, not a good idea. I won't prescribe it. That's their prerogative. You'd always go see another doctor, but that's their prerogative. So this is, I mean, I'm not aware of anything like this in our medical history. I'm by no means a historian of this, but it is shocking. This has never been about tolerance, has it? This has never been about diversity. This has been about my way or the highway, and we're going to put you under pressure.
Yeah, there is this kind of a totalitarian impulse.
Yeah.
Right. That Senator Weiner has and the LGBT caucus has regarding, how we are treated. It's like, if you disagree with the treatment we want for ourselves, we will make you give it to us. We will punish you. We will destroy your career. There is only one way, right? No one is to disagree. Right, and those who disagree are going to pay. Yeah. Right, it's like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, so that's the reality of what we're dealing with. So one last thing, Greg, and then we'll find out what our listeners and viewers could do. there was a bill in California that was just removed before it would have gone forward, and it likely would have passed. I dubbed it the Must Stay Gay bill. And this bill would have banned all professional counseling, not for minors, that's already in place in California, but people of any age who had unwanted same-sex attraction, wanted to go to a professional therapist, counselor, psychologist to get to the root of it and try to deal with it, or struggling with gender identity and wanted to become at home in their own body. It would have been illegal in the state of California to provide professional help for those people. Again, unbelievable, outrageous. That's why I dubbed it the Must Stay Gay bill. You were on the front lines with that. You were involved with people testifying, ex-gays and others. In your opinion, why is it that the bill was withdrawn when it had a good chance of passage?
Niflif versus Becerra. That was a Supreme Court case that came down in July when there was a recess. And that was a Supreme Court decision against another California bill. It was a law that had been passed targeting pregnancy care centers, and it was telling those centers that were licensed, it says, hey, since you are licensed by the state, we have the right to determine what you need to say to your clientele. And one of the things they were going to require that they say is they had to tell them about where to get free abortion.
Yep.
And the Supreme Court said, you know what? No, this is a private organization. Compelled speech is violating free speech. The government can't compel someone to say a thing they do not believe in, right? And the whole law was based on this idea that government could that professional speech had less freedom of speech right than regular speech. And professional speech was licensed speech. And the Supreme Court came back and said, well, professional speech has no less freedom of speech rights than any other speech, right? So it undermined the whole idea that licensed speech had less freedom of speech rights than other speech. Well, that is what we have here in California. We have a ban on counseling for minors.
Yep.
So you can't if a minor has unwanted same-sex attraction or gender dysphoria, you can't help them accept their own bodies or to change their feelings or behaviors, right, towards heterosexual behavior or feelings. And so that law undermined that whole principle. So that is one of the reasons I think the law has never come back, right, is because I think they knew if they passed it that the Supreme Court would make a decision that would outlaw for the whole country.
Got it.
So and I'm not sure if you saw what happened in Florida this last week. The Circuit Court, 11th degree. Now, what do they call it? The
Circuit Court of Appeals.
Yes, number 11. They just came down with a case that struck down a counseling ban in one of the cities there in Florida.
Yep. There was a major ruling. Yeah, of course.
That was a major ruling based on free speech, right? That you can't tell a counselor just because they're saying something that's super unpopular by the government that you can't dictate their speech. What they can and can't say in a counseling session.
And it is, this stuff is all completely totalitarian. Hey, Greg, just stay with me a couple more minutes. On the other side of the break, I want you to let our listeners and viewers know, can they do anything outside of California? Those who are listening in California, what can they do? So I know you're busy. A couple more minutes and we'll be done. And then I'm going to talk about a related subject of interest, probably to every parent out there. We'll be right back. Thanks, friends, for joining us on The Line of Fire. Let me grab Greg for one more moment. Greg Burt from the California Family Policy Council. So, Greg, those within California that are hearing this broadcast, what can they do? Those outside of California, what can they do?
Well, if you're in California, you got to call your legislator, because and if you come to our website, CaliforniaFamily.org, and you scroll down to the bottom, you can see our action center, and we got a call-in campaign we're working on for both these particular bills. SB 923 and SB 107. We can connect you to your legislator and make sure you got to make sure they know that you're really concerned about these bills. Now, if you're out, I mean, usually people outside of California, I'm assuming you don't really pay too much attention to what California does in its own state. But this particular bill is targeted at you, right? I mean, sadly, California is starting to turn itself into a threat to every family in the country with this bill, because it's not going to respect your parental rights. It's as it should, right? And so you got to get your own legislators to complain. I mean, I would love it if we had some attorney generals, governors. If this bill gets close to passing, which I don't know, it's nothing's stopping it so far. But if we get some national attention on this particular bill, that's going to put a lot more pressure on legislators, because, you know, the Constitution is set up that each state honors the civil judgments of every other state. And California is now deciding they're gonna resist that. They're gonna oppose that. They're gonna violate the Constitution and just see what happens. So other states got to stand up for themselves, and you know, we need your help. Stand up. That helps us here. Although we still got a ton of conservatives here, California. We're a big state. We're just overwhelmed with the number of liberals. So please stand up. It helps.
All right. So give the website one more time, please.
CaliforniaFamily.org.
All right. So especially everyone listening, viewing within California, go there today. Get in touch with your representative. You'll be directed to do that when you go there. And I should have an article, hopefully next day or two, that's online, laying all this out, laying out what's happening. And again, we're not just talking about what happens in California is up to people in California. No, we're talking about it could be your kid that flees to California that has life-altering drugs put in their body or surgery done to their body against your will or consent, directly because you have a state that did the right thing. It is extraordinary. It is outrageous. Hey, Greg, stay on the front lines. You got people standing with you, praying for you, and we will trust that God's righteousness will win out and that these kids' lives will be protected. Thank you so much. Hey, friends, I hope you enjoyed that video. If you did, click on one of the boxes on the screen, check out another one of our videos, and be sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell so that you don't miss a single video. You know, we discovered that about 60% of you that are watching our videos aren't subscribers. So subscribe today. Doesn't cost you a dime. And if you want to support our work, Line of Fire, and all the things that we do, follow one of the links on the screen below.